Relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It's official. Former WBC light flyweight champion Kim Clavel will be returning to action, and it doesn't appear she's going to run it back with Jessica Neri Plata, this division's newly crowned unified champion, one of two in the women's light flyweight division, using sophisticated apparatus to decipher
and discern the secret language from Jeff Jeffries.
It appears the former champion Kim Clavel will be facing Naomi Reyes in Bell Square on April 28th, late next month. Clavel, the former WBC light flyweight champion, begins her journey towards the reconquest of another major title.
Perhaps it was a wise decision not to have an immediate rematch with Jessica Plata.
Foregoing an immediate rematch, I actually think Kim Clavel, she can patch up the holes, make the necessary adjustments in a second fight so that she'd have success in the second fight where she didn't in the first. In the first fight between Kim and Jessica, Kim allowed herself to get sucked into a war.
Drawn out into exchanges, caught fighting Jessica Neri's fight as opposed to her own.
Jessica Neri Plata, who is the more heavy-handed puncher of the two, and I said as much ahead of the fight, ahead of that unification match between light flyweight champions, that Kim's got to watch herself, because Jessica's a harder puncher than Yesenia Gomez, who Kim Clavel had won the WBC title from. Jessica punches harder.
She won't be able to string 3 and 4 punch combinations safely against Jessica the way she did against Yesenia.
Unfortunately for Kim Clavel, she caught herself stringing combinations together in the pocket with Jessica and paid for it.
You don't want to do that with a more heavy-handed puncher.
You're well within striking distance of her, giving her every opportunity she needs to use that power. Kim Clavel sports a professional record of 16 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 3 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 17 professional contests.
She's on the bounce.
Looking to rebound off that loss with Naomi Reyes, who seems to have some power herself, some power of her own.
Sporting a professional record of 9 wins with 2 losses, no draws, 5 knockouts. Naomi has more knockouts in 11 fights than Kim has in 17.
So to some degree, to some extent, Naomi is a puncher. Perhaps that's what Team Clavel are working on. Working around a fighter's power. Learning to.
Yeah.
Naomi, like Kim Clavel, is coming right off a loss. Naomi's coming off a loss late last year to Gabriela Fundoria, the younger sister of Sebastian Fundoria.
Naomi suffered a loss to Gabriela late last year in October, whereas Kim Clavel, she suffered a loss to Jessica Neri Plata more recently in January.
The rescheduled unification match with Jessica Neri Plata, Kim Clavel has been keeping a very ambitious schedule of activity, going from one champion to the other. The then champion, then WBC light flyweight champion Yesenia Gomez, straight into a fight with Jessica.
She lost the fight, but that's all right. What I really like about all of this is that they're not waiting a year and a day to get Kim back out there.
She suffered her first professional loss in the first quarter of this year, and just like that, in the second quarter, she's returning to action. That's what you want to see.
Don't sit on that loss and allow it to fester. Get back to your winning ways. Get back in the winner's bracket. I think Kim Clavel can.
And I happen to think she can win that rematch with Jessica Neri Plata. She just needs to go about fighting the fight a different way. Be a little bit more judicious with her combinations. Only 1 and 2 punches at a time, and get out of the pocket.
An emphasis on head movement and upper body movement with a bit of focus on getting Jessica Neri Plata to throw and then countering what she throws.
Kim Clavel is still faster than Jessica, still more athletic, still more nuanced and streamlined. Instead of attempting to fight fire with fire, she needs to work around it.
She is somewhat more pint-sized than Jessica is, so there's no way that Kim gets off her punches without stepping into the kill box, stepping into the pocket.
It's gonna take a bit of in-and-out game to win that second fight, though she won't have Jessica in front of her late next month. She'll be facing Naomi Reyes.
What Jessica decides to do moving forward, your guess is as good as mine. I guess that means she's free to move straight into a fight with Evelyn Bermudez, the only other unified champion at this weight.
But because neither Jessica Plata or Evelyn Bermudez are with a major promotional outfit that could get both champions a big cash guarantee for an undisputed light flyweight title fight, it's questionable as to whether or not that's going to happen.
In theory, it could, because both champions are free, but
money talks, and this is prize fighting after all. For either Evelyn Bermudez or Jessica Neri Plata, it would be a very risky fight. There has to be a reward on the other side of it that warrants the risk.
Thus, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see both champions go their separate ways and perhaps take involuntary unnecessary title defenses while they wait for something big to roll around.
I'll go as far as saying that if Kim beats Naomi Reyes late next month, I wouldn't be surprised if she changes her trajectory, continues to forego a rematch with Jessica, and in place takes on Evelyn instead.
So that she can approach that second fight with Jessica as a unified champion, and so that it can be for all the marbles.
We'll see how the cookie crumbles. For now, keep your eyes peeled for Clavel versus Reyes late next month, and we'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches.
Did you hear anything about Joshua and Zhang potentially happening?
Yeah. Apparently he turned it down. So I don't know. Take from that what you will.
You can't really accuse Joyce himself of name-dropping Anthony Joshua because it was the interviewer himself who asked the question. But why the interviewer thought it relevant to ask that question?
We knew that already.
Months ago, before the fight between Joyce and Zhang was officially announced, we knew that Zhang was one of several fighters in the running for an Anthony Joshua fight. There was Zhang, Otto Wallin, Jermaine Franklin.
And we know who he went with. He went with Jermaine Franklin.
So you could say the exact same thing about Otto Wallin that you could say about Zhang, that I guess Anthony Joshua turned him down as well. I don't know what the relevance of that is, but it was the interviewer that asked the question.
It wasn't Joyce just bumping his gums and looking to say something spicy. It was the interviewer himself who was fishing for something. And he didn't get much out of Joe. Make of that what you will. In truth, I would have preferred to see Anthony Joshua versus Zhang over a Jermaine Franklin fight. I actually would have preferred to see Anthony Joshua versus Otto Wallin above all others. Zhang would have came in a close second.
But because he is coming off of 2 consecutive losses, and because he is breaking in a new trainer in Derek James, I understand them taking their foot off the gas a bit. It's not like Jermaine Franklin is some mug anyway. He gave a good account of himself opposite the ring Dillian fight. So I get what's going on here, and I don't mind the fight.
The virtue of fighting Jermaine Franklin is the same as the virtue of fighting Zhang. Some people thought that Jermaine Franklin did enough to beat Dillian Whyte the same way they thought Zhang did enough to win the Hrgovic fight.
It's the same underlying principle. It's the same thing. Both Zhang and Jermaine Franklin gave a good account of themselves in their last outings, so much so that people thought they won, that they deserved the decision, even though they didn't get it.
I'm okay with the Franklin fight.
I'm even more okay with Joyce sharing the ring with Zhang, a chance for Smoke and Joyce to keep the momentum going after his career best win over Joseph Parker.
I like that fight. I like the card.
Zhang pledges that his fists will break Joyce. Joe, who has seemed all but unbreakable his last couple of fights. That chin.
Cast iron jaw he's got.
Took a lot of punches in the Dubois fight well over a year ago. Took a lot of shots. Didn't seem to faze him. In truth, it's not uncommon to see Joyce on the receiving end of some heavy punches, some heavy shots, and they don't bother him.
Now we're gonna see. We're gonna find out if he can take a hard shot from Zhang on the chin.
Zhang, who dropped Philippe Hrgovic in his last fight, hurt him a couple of times. As stated, a lot of people felt Zhang did enough to win a decision, and he didn't get it, though he deserved one.
The question now becomes, who's going to stay in character? Will Joyce stay in character as having one of the best chins in today's heavyweight division, or will Zhang expose Joe the same way he just exposed Philippe Hrgovic?
Is it that we're reading too much into Zhang's fight with Philippe Hrgovic, or is it that we're reading too much into how Joyce has been looking fight by fight? We're going to find out a little bit more about the winner and a little bit more about the loser next month on the 15th.
When the fight's supposed to go down, former unified super featherweight champion Michaela Mayer. She's going to be taking on Christina Lenarditu on that card.
It's a great card. Queensberry Promotions card. Frank Warren, Old Fish Eyes, who's always talking about how irrelevant Anthony Joshua is in today's heavyweight division, yet the interviewer thought it prudent to ask about him.
Bring him up, I should say.
If the guy's irrelevant, then what fucking difference does it make if he turned down a Zhang fight?
Who cares? He's irrelevant, ain't he?
It's what they say. Nobody wants to see him fight anymore. His marquee value, it's in the tanker, it's in the crapper.
He can't sell.
Yet he seems to be playing a bigger location with a fight against Jermaine Franklin than unbeaten Joyce is playing with Zhang. Joe's fight with Zhang is at the Copper Box,
which only seats about 7,500 spectators.
Anthony Joshua is back at the O2 Arena in London, which seats approximately 20,000.
If he's irrelevant and Joyce isn't, then why is Anthony Joshua fighting in front of a bigger crowd at a bigger location?
Don't misunderstand me. I ain't got nothing against Joyce. I'm just addressing the fallacy in Frank Warren's arguments that Anthony Joshua's irrelevant to the division.
Tyson Fury likes to say that too.
Along with his cult of mutants, his cult of followers who seem to think that whatever he says or whatever comes out of his mouth is gospel. Well, I'll tell you, if Anthony Joshua really were irrelevant, he'd be the one fighting at the Kappa box, and it would be Joyce at the O2.
Fight's a great fight.
I like both fights, if I'm being honest. I'm okay with Joshua versus Franklin, even if it wasn't my first choice, and I'm perfectly okay with Joyce versus Zhang.
It's a good fight.
I like Joyce to win it. I'm leaning towards Joe.
I think in the early rounds, Zhang might get off to a decent start, and he does have power fighting out of the southpaw stance. I could see him giving Smoke and Joe some issues in the beginning, but it's not how you start. It's how you finish.
Once Joe gets smoking, once he picks up some momentum and he really starts laying into Zhilei Zhang, I don't think Zhilei Zhang's going to be able to hold up.
I don't think this fight goes the distance.
I can see Joyce laying into, wearing on, and wearing out Zhilei Zhang after a couple of rounds.
So I do like Joyce to win the fight. I like Joyce to win by way of knockout or technical knockout.
Look for this next month on the 15th.
Aired here in America by way of ESPN+.
In men's junior middleweight news, on the heels of his latest victory over former WBC junior middleweight champion Tony Harrison, in sensational fashion, I might say, Tszyu says, Charlo's a real angry man. He barks a lot, just grumpy all the time.
He is.
Both the Charlo brothers are known for their temperament, or the lack thereof. They're both hotheads, the twin brothers, the twin champions.
Whether or not you like that kind of stuff, I'll leave those judgments up to you. That just boils down to preference.
Charlo's a real angry man, Tszyu said. That's just how he is. He barks a lot. Tony, on the other hand, is a happy man, happy about what he does, enjoys life a bit more. The other guy's just grumpy all the time. Detroit's Harrison playfully talked trash during the promotion of their bout. He repeatedly stated that Tszyu hadn't done anything to warrant the Charlo bout, but Tszyu never took Harrison's criticism personally. There was never no bad blood between us, man. Ever, Tszyu said. Like I said, I could show him around Australia one day, and he can show me around Detroit one day.
There's no bad blood.
It's not uncommon for fighters who have shared the ring with each other to, at times, form a bond, a friendship even, once the dust settles. That could be the case between Tim and Tony.
It could be, but now Tim's got bigger fish to fry. Tony questioned the legitimacy of Tszyu's claim at the undisputed crown at this weight. What had he done up until that point to deserve a shot at all the belts? You could ask that same question about any one of Jermell Charlo's mandatories.
You could ask that about Bakram Murtazaliev. You could ask that about Sebastian Fundora. Tony Harrison asked that about Tszyu.
And Tim showed him.
Harrison, who has admitted mutual dislike between him and Charlo, expressed respect for Tszyu as well. I have no ill feelings towards Tim, said Harrison, whom Charlo knocked out in the 11th round of their rematch on December 2019. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed Fight Week. I enjoyed the presser. Tim, he's a good dude. Like I said in the beginning, it's no hard feelings between me and him. So in any way I can be of service to anybody that's going to help me in my situation out, I'll do it. You know what I mean? Like, whatever pays the bills for that role is all I care about.
Tony Harrison here today is the only man that holds a victory over Jermell Charlo. And because him and Tim, they ain't got no bad blood with each other, Tony Harrison in some ways could turn out to be Tim.
He could be Tim's secret weapon. He could turn out to be Tim's ace in the hole.
Perhaps he has some insights on how Tim can hope to beat Jermell Charlo.
This division's undisputed champion, with Tszyu pushing for a July date for the fight with Jermell in Las Vegas.
Is that really going to be Jermell Charlo's next fight? Jermell, who's been out of action a while, and if they do fight in July, it will have been over a year's time since his last fight. Don't forget that he's supposed to be coming off an injury.
Tszyu isn't. In a perfect world, we go in July. Glenn Jennings said to Fox Sports, "We already know Tim isn't carrying any injuries from the win over Tony, which is wonderful. So we'll do an assessment before he disappears on holiday, but I'm thinking early to mid-July would be ideal. Obviously, we're bound by Charlo's recovery, but I do understand he's back in the gym, so there is every chance the fight is going to be earlier than everyone initially expected. And I know, given what happened tonight, Tim and Igor, Coach Gulabev, will want to keep rolling. Jennings believes the fight between Tszyu and Charlo is bigger and more credible than ever after Tszyu's stoppage of Harrison, who is still the only man to beat Jermell Charlo.
Is Tszyu the next one?
After disposing of Harrison like he did, Tim now has to be considered among the elites, up there with the top 1%. Tony Harrison, he was Tim's ticket to credibility. This is the guy who beat Jermel Charlo, so now we go and fight Charlo ourselves. He has to answer to Tim just like Tony Harrison did, and Tim will win that fight. Prove he's the best in the world in his division, bar none.
When Tszyu initially inked that pact with the PBC and agreed to take on Tyrell Gachet,
even though the fight was set to take place in America, and even though I got the feeling that the PBC were trying to take this guy's WBO interim status away from him, I still liked Tszyu's chances.
even though I felt like the people at the PBC were trying to set him up.
I still felt he could pull it off on foreign soil, and he did. And more recently, opposite the ring, Tony Harrison.
You know, I understood that Tony, he's got a lot more experience against better opponents than Tim has fought so far. I understood all of that, but I also understood that styles make fights, and Tszyu had the right base style to beat Tony Harrison.
But with Jermel, it's a different kettle of fish.
It is.
A different kind of gravy. We ain't afraid of anyone, because there are now 22 fighters who've said Tim isn't up to it, said Tim is lower level, that he is nothing like his father. There have also been 22 silenced, and while Tim has some things like his father, he is very much still his own fighter. He's developed a style that is Tszyu, not Kostya-Tszyu.
Which is true. For those not aware, Tszyu and his father, they have a bit of a strained relationship. You don't see with Tim and Kostya what you see with Teofimo Lopez and his dad.
Angel Garcia and Danny Garcia, Bill Haney and Devin Haney.
Chris Eubank Sr. and Chris Eubank Jr. Kostya-Tszyu isn't playing helicopter mom to Tim.
He isn't. Kostya-Tszyu's based out of Russia these days, and Tim's based out of Australia.
Has been for years. That's how he's been able to develop a following there. And what you're seeing from Tim, it's not coming from Kostya, you understand. It's coming from Tim.
Grafting in the gym and the work that he's doing. Tim is the reason that Tim is so successful.
But can he continue to be successful opposite the ring, this division's undisputed champion?
If they go in July, Tszyu will have seen action at least 2 times within the last 12 months, but Jermel...
Tim was in action in March of last year against Tyrell Gachet, and more recently he was in action against Tony Harrison.
He's about as sharp as he's going to be.
Uphill battle.